Making America healthy again. MAHA has been all the talk, but now it's moving from a slogan into some actual policy prescriptions. And what does that mean for the corn industry? We're visiting with John Bode, CEO of the Corn Refiners Association. And John, as we said, MAHA kind of starts out as a slogan, and frankly, who can be against making America healthy again? But it's gone through a couple of iterations already, and it continues to evolve, doesn't it?
It is evolving. It will keep evolving, and hopefully evolving to a more science and risk-based approach.
When there was a report that came out in the spring, I received a number of texts and calls from people saying, you need to read this because there's some stuff in here that doesn't quite jibe with what we talk about in agriculture.
It was downright flaky. And that report was a disaster. I think it was an embarrassment to the Trump administration. And I think the Trump administration, big picture, told the MAHA folks they need to listen to the real world, get broader input. And as a result, there has been a more science and risk-based approach.
And I think there are things in the report, the later report that has come out, it talks a lot about these ultra-processed foods. But there again, that's a nice slogan to throw around. It sounds great. Well, gosh, who would want to eat ultra-processed foods? But then when you kind of break it down, it's maybe a little more nuanced than that.
It certainly is. You know, ultra-processed food sounds bad, and nobody wants to eat that just from the way it sounds. But when you look at the attempts to come up with a definition, they invariably say things like bread is processed food, high fiber bread is ultra processed. That makes no sense.
As you said, it seems that things have changed. Does it continue to kind of evolve and change?
It's all over the place still, Steve, and I think it will move to a more science and risk-based approach, because if it doesn't, it's going to really increase the cost of food.
You know, in the first report that came out, I think it mentioned things like atrazine and glyphosate, and you started getting into a whole conversation. Well, if we're talking about risk and science-based approach, those tools have been tremendously successful for the American.
And, you know, and that story was told in very clear terms by the agriculture community writ large, and I was thrilled to be part of that, supporting others. That's what calmed it down.
In Nebraska, where I'm at, we talk about what we call the golden triangle: corn, cattle, ethanol. And those ethanol folks tell me that the products coming out there aren't a byproduct, they're a co-product. And we're able to do so much with that kernel of corn.
Absolutely. You know, Steve, I'm told that about 70% of the products sold in the supermarket have some ingredient or input from a corn refinery. So if it's not in the box, it's the box itself. And so it is, and the real growth opportunity for American agriculture is that bioeconomy. I think of ethanol as the first step, the point of the spear of the bioeconomy.
As we wrap things up, but it's one thing for you probably to engage with the folks in D.C., but when they hear from folks in maybe coming from the farm in Nebraska, do policymakers listen?
They listen more when they're hearing from the real world, and that's why we think it's so important for the people in Nebraska and around the country to speak up.
As we wrap things up, you said a couple of principles going forward where you would like to see things go with MAHA.
Science and risk-based policies. That will cause us to continue to evolve, continue to get better, but do so in a way that genuinely advances the goals.
We've been visiting with John Bode, CEO of the Corn Refiners Association. I'm Steve White.